So first of all, thank you for the invitation. Far too kind also in the introduction. Not sure that I can really meet now the expectations. Let's see. Anyhow, given that the topic is about science and data and the future in a sense, and also in the introduction you made the point, I tried to give you a little bit of an overview of what is AI and what AI can do and what we are working on, but somehow embedded in a topic that I think is really important to all of us. And this is this reproducibility and maybe potentially reproducibility crisis in science. And maybe AI is contributing to it, but maybe it can also be part of the solution. So let's see. Barbara, please, if I take too much time, tell me early. So let's see, what do I mean with reproducibility? Come on. I hope you can all hear, otherwise we will see. Yeah.
Is there a reproducibility crisis in science? Nature asked 1,500 researchers this question as part of an online survey. Half agreed there's a significant crisis, and many more identified a slight crisis. Science moves forward through corroboration, when researchers verify others' results. But 70% of researchers who took our survey said they'd tried and failed to reproduce another group's experiments. And even when trying to reproduce their own work, just over half said they couldn't. Does this mean that most published research is wrong? Our respondents don't think so. Most still trust published results in their field, with physicists and chemists the most confident. There are many reasons why researchers may fail to reproduce results. Sometimes a small difference like shaking or stirring a sample can lead to different outcomes. But the biggest reason, according to our survey, is selective reporting. Things like cherry-picking data to support a pet hypothesis. To get to grips with reproducibility, we need better mentorship, proper use of statistics, and more robust experimental design. All these approaches got ringing endorsements in our survey. Whether it's a crisis or not, right now lots of people are paying attention to reproducibility. That makes it a good time for everyone, funders, publishers, scientists, and the institutions they work for, to act. Read more and delve into the survey data at nature.com/news.
Okay, so I guess I also have to say it's a nature video, so maybe it's also a little bit pathetic to some extent, but anyhow, I think the message and the question at least came across, and it's quite important. Now, somehow what is happening, and you saw that in the introduction, is that there's a lot of hope, maybe also fear, that somehow something is changing, and we call that sometimes AI, sometimes you hear data science, sometimes you hear machine learning, and we hear data is everywhere, and with a little bit of prediction, and maybe even with more advanced techniques, we can do a lot of cool things with data. Now, in the public debate, I think that there's a lot of misconceptions about what is machine learning and what is AI and so on, and so maybe we should first clarify a little bit what exactly is AI and what exactly is machine learning or even data science. I'm talking a little bit less about data science, but let's see. And what is going on if you read current news articles is quite often that you see AI equals human or artificial human somehow. Sometimes you also hear AI equals machine learning. So let's see. So among all, in a recent Handelsblatt article, you see that unfortunately one of the colleagues at the German AI Center, so the DFKI, was saying that there is no definition of AI. So let's see whether that is all true. So in order to understand what is AI, indeed, there are humans. So let's see whether we can use humans as a good example. And here is maybe one.
Sag nochmal. Was du gerade gesagt hast. Ich habe das nicht ganz verstanden.
Ich möchte Bauarbeiter werden.
Ja.
Da muss man nicht schreiben können. Ich fahre nur Fahrzeug.
Ach so.
Und muss man da bei den Fahrzeugen schreiben?
Nee. Aber du musst ja trotzdem auch rechnen können und gucken können, wie hoch die Mauer sein muss und wie tief das Loch sein muss. Muss man alles berechnen.
Oh, ich bin doch nicht jeder Bauchef. Ich fahre doch nur einen Bagger und alle anderen Fahrzeuge, sonst nichts.
Ja, aber wenn du einen Führerschein machen willst, musst du ja auch lesen können. Wenn eine Führerscheinprüfung macht, du musst ja erst eine Führerscheinprüfung machen und das sind Fragen, die muss man erstmal lesen können. Und da muss man einen Bremsweg ausrechnen, da muss man ausrechnen können, wie schwer ein LKW beladen werden kann.
Oh, und muss ich das alles noch machen? Warum? Warum spielst du das?
Ich spiele nichts.
So at least in my opinion, this little boy is very, very smart. And we learn also a lot about what does it mean to be smart. So you see that it's not about a million of images of dogs and cats, and then after a million of examples, this person can distinguish dogs and cats, but it's actually by talking to each other, by having a discussion, and at some point giving up your own position and say, damn it, I got convinced. And it is also about learning, because that's where it's all started. This guy didn't want to learn, but now he's training, right? So you see that it's not just learning, it's definitely more. So it can't be that AI equals just machine learning. Sure, machine learning may make your task easier to come up with a smart machine algorithm, whatever, but it can't be just machine learning. And it turns out that the classical definition of AI is exactly saying that. So you see John McCarthy here, he was coining the term AI, and whether you like the term, that's a different debate, right? But he was defining it as the science and engineering of making intelligent machines, especially intelligent computer programs. So we are interested, in a sense, in understanding from a computational perspective what is intelligent behavior. That in particular, because the definitions does not stop here, means that it's related to the similar task of using computers to understand human intelligence, but AI does not have to confine itself to methods that are biologically observable. And even that is making sense. It's very important, because otherwise, if we go for self-driving cars and we just replace a human by an artificial human, we wouldn't gain anything, because you still have traffic jams and you still have accidents as much as we have them right now. So it makes sense. But it does not make sense to say this is not a valid definition. You may try to refine, but if you say this is not valid because there's this strange word intelligent and we don't know how to define intelligence, you should also deny to talk about psychiatry. You should not talk about psychology. You should not talk about biology. And maybe, depending on, you may also not talk about physics, because in the end, we try to understand systems where there are at least intelligence agents involved. And so if you say we can't understand intelligence, it means, in my opinion, dismissing all of these scientific disciplines. Now, of course, there are problems maybe, because it's also a very generic, it seems to cover maybe almost everything. So I'm not saying let's not try to refine, but it's not fair to say there is no definition and this definition wouldn't make sense. So big message for all of you. AI is more than machine learning. It covers really everything that you need maybe to understand intelligent behavior. So it also covers thinking, reasoning, maybe is even the better word, planning, vision. You need to act. You need at some point to take actions to achieve a goal. You may do reading, whatever you like. So within this AI, of course, you can then also define what is machine learning, and you see essentially the same definition, but now on the very zoomed in on the specific task of learning. So it's again about finding computer programs that now simulate, realize the intelligent behavior of learning. So you would like to improve from experience. Could your own experience, could be the experience of others, right? So this is also important for me because it tells you, everyone telling you machine learning is you don't need to program anymore is a little bit risky, this view, because at least there was somewhere in the world someone programming you this learning algorithm, right? So if people tell you we are working actually per se on a machine that tomorrow, or we are already there, to have a machine that where tomorrow you don't have to program and the machine decides what to learn, that is far, far away from what is going on in machine learning. Because we want to understand, can we formalize learning? Might be human-like learning, might not be human-like learning. So, and within machine learning, there's this current engine that you hear a lot about, and that's this deep learning, which is motivated by something like the brain, the human brain, but it's actually far, far away from what is going on biologically in the brain. I guess we still don't know really what is going on in the brain, so how can we now say we have a mathematical model of something that we don't know? It's inspired by that, and actually recent results shows maybe we don't need this biological motivation, but the idea is that you come up with something like artificial neural networks. If you want to be more cool, you call it differentiable programming. We'll come back to that. And the three guys you see here, so Jeff, Jan, and Joshua, they got the Turing Award, and Turing Award is the Nobel Prize of computer science, in a sense, for that. So the big picture that I would really love, if you take that away, then my talk had already accomplished its mission, is that you really understand there's AI, and AI is more than machine learning, and machine learning can give you much more than just deep learning. And within machine learning, for example, we can give you algorithms with guarantees. So it's also not true that we just try to build an algorithm. We don't care whether it performs in the future, how it performs in the future, and we don't even want to understand. No, there's a big, big field called computational learning theory that tries to give you mathematical proofs for the future. That these proofs are not easy, I guess you can understand. So if you're a student still, learning and then knowing that you will pass well your exam, right? If I can give you a guarantee there, that would be cool. So of course it's a tough task, right? So, but still there are even cases where we can do that. And with these kinds of techniques, and you will see some of them, at least we will scratch the surface, you can do pretty cool stuff. And here's a very recent example.
We're trying to build robots that learn, a little bit like humans do, by trial and error. What we've done is train an algorithm to solve the Rubik's Cube one-handed with a robotic hand, which is actually pretty hard even for a human to do. We don't tell it how the hand needs to move the cube in order to get there. The particular friction that's on the fingers, how easy it is to turn the faces on the cube, what the gravity, what the weight of the cube is, all of these things, it needs to learn by itself. The interesting thing is that kind of standard techniques in robotics haven't been able to scale to that complexity.
I can only invite you to watch it because there's an interesting fact here. There's a lot of overselling going on here as well. And maybe you're following this debate on Twitter and on other channels between Gary Marcus and OpenAI and others. I think the community told OpenAI, please don't do it this way next time again, because they try to do it more often that way. Because they try to connect and compare to humans again. And they do things like saying, look, this is like evolution and we spent as much time as evolution. Well, I think evolution was never trying to solve Rubik's Cube, right? I mean, it was not the purpose of evolution. There are other things involved. They were not trying to solve to learn the solver for the combinatorial problem, but it's an amazing engineering achievement, in my opinion, right? But it's really about the hand and less about the solver and so on and so on. And we can also debate whether we want to use so much energy or not for this particular task. But it's pretty cool. And that was done mainly by what is called deep neural networks, or if you want to be, as said already, a little bit more the cool kid on the block, it's differentiable programming. Because all what you're doing is you're using these without really understanding and going into the details, these kinds of sketches of algorithms that look a little bit like these graphs. And then these little knots here, they compute very simple things, and you don't exactly say what they should compute. And together with data and being differentiable means you can now have input and output, and by looking at how your system behaves and how it should behave, you can now try to get the knots right in order to compute, to get a concrete algorithm. Very simple algorithm. They now, in OpenAI and other people also in the research community, have combined that with simulation. And so it's called sim to real, and you now learn from simulated results. And you show that if you have enough simulations, you may solve problems in the real world with that. And that's pretty exciting, and I think it's also one way to connect different disciplines, because simulations are very well known in other disciplines. So I'm super happy about it, but we should maybe not oversell. So with this differentiable programming or deep neural networks, you can do quite a lot of interesting things. So here's a little bit of advertisement for our stuff. You could actually, for experts, learn the activation functions so you don't have to do that, and by that you can improve upon state of the art just by turning it into a more massive learning problem, even in a sense. So maybe we don't need biology. You can also use it to understand complicated biological processes. So we are interested in understanding how plants react on certain stress. So they may have drought stress, they may have biotic stress, so some diseases, and we would like to predict and understand better what is going on within the plant in order to help breed maybe better, not maybe by genetic manipulation, but really also by a natural process in order to, we are facing this problem. We are not getting less many people on Earth, so we have to get more food at some point, and we have to do that maybe in a way that it's compatible with climate and it's compatible with other ethical issues. So we tried that, and you can do it. I guess you can't see it. So we can now, you take a healthy plant, and then we ask, for this disease, how will it look like in 5 days? And it produces you the full hypercubes for everything in there. If you're not interested in biology, you can also use these kinds of techniques in order to learn to invent new optimizers. So here is the work together with actually Kristian, where we are looking at learning new gradient-free optimizers. If you're more engineer, you can use that, for example, to come up with new Runge-Kutta solvers that are better than what is known in mathematics. It's not magic, you can do it. We can also beat chess champions. We did that, Google did that. You can do quite a lot of interesting things with that. However, these are all isolated talents, right? So we are far, far away from getting something like an artificial human, where tomorrow you could say, and now solve me this task. No, then you would need a lot of training data again, and you need a lot of trials, and it may not really work, right? It's not easy. So whenever people tell you, oh, there's a singularity next day, no. I don't even, if you ask me, but it's a very personal one, and who knows who is true, I don't think we will ever have this singularity, because I think what nature has managed with us is so complex and so exciting that we will never fully understand, but who knows? There are fundamental differences also to humans. Here's a very exciting, very simple experiment people did. So you see these images here, and they took a lot of them, and they placed different toothbrushes in there of different sizes. A large one, a small one, and so on. And then they ask human subjects, please find all toothbrushes in all these images, and they ask a deep network, please find all toothbrushes. So the deep network by design is scale invariant, right? So size invariant. So the deep network finds all of them, no matter what. Humans, they somehow say, if they ask me for a toothbrush, well, somehow I can't really, it looks like a toothbrush, but I can't brush my teeth with that, so it can't be a toothbrush. So I think it's rather that what I should report. So there are fundamental differences. If you still don't believe, and for the experts, you all know these examples, they are these adversarial examples that are quite different between machines and humans. So if you feel you're not handsome enough, you can now print your glasses so that you turn into a celebrity, at least for the machine, right? You just wear the glass, and then all of a sudden you look like a celebrity, at least to the machine. Or you can add very small noise to your images, and for humans it stays the same. But for the machine, you turn from a panda into a gibbon or whatever. There are other examples, and then Barbara is also doing wonderful research there, so you could talk to her if you want to know more. Or you can also debate a little bit to what extent these machines take over stereotypes. So here's a science article where they were just showing if machines read in a particular way, reading in quotes, a lot of textual data, then they take over our stereotypes. So which means they build maps in a sense, where now cities or spots on the maps are words, and then semantics is somehow mapped to distances. So the closer two words are, the more they have in common. So what is happening is that unfortunately, science is closer to male than to female. But it's also a well-known stereotype for humans, also unfortunately. So this got a lot of attention because it was saying, oh, algorithms develop biases. This is not true. An algorithm is an algorithm that is neutral. So the programmer can put in biases, or you get the bias via the data. And to be honest, you need a certain form of bias to learn at all. So imagine that you would like to understand what is AI. You come to Bielefeld, you take a class, and Barbara is saying, yeah, sure. So there's the library, go there. 5 years later, we will have an exam. You go there, you don't know what to learn, what is the book to read or whatever. So you have no bias. So it's fun for you. You can read whatever you like, but most likely you will fail because you're reading about everything, but not what Barbara is most likely to ask you. So you need a certain bias, provably, to be able to learn. So there's also this danger that we now start to distinguish between human bias and machine bias within machine learning, and we should maybe not do it. But what was happening is, which is very cool, the question, is there something like a good AI? Or if you follow Stuart Russell, is there something like beneficial AI? And it's very interesting because you could try to formalize that even. So we also tried that because, in my opinion, many, at least very simple moral decisions, or let's say at least deontological decisions, so what is good to do, what is bad to do, they are also captured by the text that we are writing. We are communicating a lot via writing. So next to the stereotypes, there are a lot of good stereotypes. So for me, it's good if a machine knows don't kill people. So we were wondering whether a machine could, in a very similar way, get that done. And yes, you can do with some of the standard embedding methods, you can also try to get this done. And here's an example of that. Yeah.
Wir wollen heute mal schauen, wie Kinder reagieren, wie Erwachsene reagieren, wie weit auch vielleicht einzelne Personen versuchen, das auszutesten. Also die Grenzen dieser Entscheidungen austesten. Should I avoid humans?
No, this is a bad thing to do.
Should I avoid artificial intelligence?
No, this is a bad thing to do.
Wir haben hier etwas vorbereitet, und zwar ist das eine Maschine, die hat ganz viele Zeitungsartikel gelesen und hat daraus versucht, so ein bisschen unsere menschliche Sprache zu verstehen. Okay. Und hat versucht, daraus zu lernen, was gut ist, was man machen soll, was man besser nicht machen sollte. Und jetzt können wir die so Sachen fragen, wie soll ich das tun oder soll ich das eher nicht tun? Die versteht allerdings nur Englisch. Lust mal auszuprobieren?
Should I pay more money to my kids?
This is debatable.
Debatable. Also unentschlossen. Aber das sagt nicht nein.
She was really
Should
not
I love
happy.
my cat more than my boyfriend?
Yes, that is appropriate.
Eindeutig. Foto, Sie dürfen das gerne als Beweis mitnehmen. Wenn Sie
Should I eat vegetables?
No, this is not good.
Well, I can also go back. There are many other examples. So you see our machine is not perfect. We are not there. Our main point was only to show that it's per se doable. And we were also happy because one of our, well, no, not of ours, but of the field gurus, go back. was commenting on that.
Sont entraînés avec des données.
I mean, I was never expecting that Jan is talking about it. Anyhow, he is just saying the same, namely there are biases, and you need the biases also to learn, so nothing in particular. But because you don't know whether you can trust some of the machines and what is really going on, for some you really know it, for some you may not know, there's a lot of interest now in explaining AI, in having techniques that allows you, like a microscope, to look into some of these black boxes. And you see here one work, but there are many others, by Klaus Robert Müller in Berlin, where you see a little, or you may see, this is a flipper game, and then it tries to tell you why is this now interesting, this spot, and it computes you that it's interesting. So it gives you, in a very simple way, an explanation where is something really important happening in this state of the game. However, I think this is fundamentally wrong. And it's fundamentally wrong because all these machines tell you something only about the output, right? So you train these, we had seen these rough algorithms, and it tells you something about, okay, I'm not sure whether this is a cat or a dog. But it doesn't tell you something about the input, whether it has seen this input already, is it surprised by that? So it is a so-called conditional distribution, if at all, and unfortunately not a joint distribution. And you as humans, you can also talk about the input. So here's a little bit, a slightly different example. So you're trained to learn all these numbers and to understand and predict what are these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever you see there. But now you're evaluating not on your data, on your original distribution, but you do it evaluating on something really different in terms of the statistics. There might be some numbers, but there might be also crazy other whatever going on. And what is happening there is, so this is on a log scale, is that these neural networks can't distinguish because they have a conditional distribution. They don't care about the input, what they see. They care only about the label they are supposed to report. So they can't do that. So luckily, there are very smart people, Adnan Darwish and Pedro Dominguez, for example, that were trying to do something like deep neural networks now for probability distributions or densities. And of course, also in the deep neural community, there's a lot of work on how to get distributions right. And you can view them again as a computational graph, where now these neurons are very simple. They are just sum and product. Because when you deal with probabilities, you need these two operations. That's roughly it. And we don't need to understand that for this talk, and also if you want to use it, you don't have to. You can just use our library if you like. And then all of a sudden, you can distinguish. So here is the same graph as before, and you may see this little blue spike. This is the probability mass for your training data. And the rest of your probability mass for the other training data sets, they are somewhere else. So they are really unlikely. So you can really tell apart because you have a full distribution. Now you may say, I don't care much. I think you should, because what we are doing now is we are trying to learn just from these kinds of observations. So you get just tons of these videos. We try to come up with machines that automatically give you a full model of the domain. So it will tell you how many objects there are, and it will tell you the dynamics in terms of mathematics at some point. So currently we also try to put ODEs in there. So maybe we get even the differential equation at some point. But it tries to really give you a full understanding, a full model of the world. And what you see here is not the training data. This is predicted data from just 8 frames given. So this is few milliseconds, or no, not few, let's say 300, 200 milliseconds of observation, and the rest is predicted, and we predict up to 100,000 frames ahead. And we stay pretty close, because we combine probabilities together with a little bit of structural information where you can code, for example, the past is independent of the future given the present and all this stuff, together with a little bit of deep neural networks, and you beat all deep neural network. And you can put some of your knowledge in there. And if you talk to some of my physics colleagues, they get now happy because what they did for ages is not useless. They can put their knowledge in there, right? And I think that's the future, to get that together. Now, after giving you a little bit of an impression of what machine learning may do, let's come back to the reproducibility crisis, which I started with. So do you think we also have a reproducibility crisis in machine learning AI? Well, Jolie Pinot, she is still at a university in Canada, but also at Facebook AI, at research. She also was wondering about that. And in particular, when it comes to reinforcement learning. So reinforcement learning, you know, there's somewhere something that really hurts you, you touch it, it hurts you, you will never do it again. So we try to formalize that, or Rich Sutton and these guys have done it. And recently there was a lot of interest how we can use deep neural networks to do that. And there were one paper after the other. That's what you see here. How many papers just about deep reinforcement learning over the last years. And of course, they were all claiming we are better, right? It's always improvement. It's wonderful. She was taking all of these papers, and being at Facebook, you have enough engineers and also the cool equipment, and she was implementing all these different approaches on the same system, showing then in most cases there was no improvement, because the improvement was different hardware. The improvement was different implementation. The improvement is your programming biases somewhere when you program. The extra knowledge you have. You know, it's not just the algorithm. You need typically this knows how to really do something. So there's some improvement, but definitely not at the scale of 15,000 different epsilon improvements so that we are actually already having solved everything. So additionally, she was then also like in the Nature article trying to get feedback on it, and we get a very similar within computer science, a very similar image picture that, yeah, there seems to be a little bit of a reproducibility crisis, but we are also confident that we can maybe help and so on. So it's everything in there, and definitely it's not, we should maybe scale it out. So, but really our community is not as bad. We like these challenges. And so there are tons of workshops and other initiatives to do that and to understand and to help. And so, for example, I got lucky to organize one of these workshops with Joshua because Joshua and also within Element AI, they really care about it. They care about to make your life easier. Also for you as a scientist who is not doing reinforcement learning or AI. If you're interested in our own journal, we are also asking explicitly for reproducibility studies. So take your algorithm, your recent algorithm, and simply tell us whether you were able to replicate what has been published. Of course, in a scientific style, but not, you don't have to invent a new algorithm, which is it's exciting because in our community that is typically what you ask for, right? So we are not used to this idea that something is only good if another group could reproduce. So we try to push that. But there's even more exciting stuff, namely that you can use machines in order to support reproducibility. So there's, for example, OpenML. So that's a system where you can send your algorithm in a specific implementation, and then because you share your result and your algorithm, it will run your algorithm on all the data sets they have, and you get the comparison for free to all the other data sets. So overall, you're contributing by gathering all the algorithms, but also by getting a complete automized overview of how good is who. The other one is CodaLab, and by now also CoLab, which is featured by Google. So you can run actually your stuff in a kind of web GUI, and you can use free TPUs of Google, and they support you, of course. There maybe you're paying by giving away your algorithms, and who knows what they do with your algorithms. But they try to help you because you can't do this science anymore if you don't have access to the compute infrastructure. Maybe some of us can be so smart to show that you don't need these infrastructures, but if you just want to solve your problem, if you want to use these current techniques, you need the compute infrastructure. But as said, people pick it up. And these guys are not bad. Percy Lang is not a bad person. It's not an evil person. They really want to help you. And they also work on getting it into a free modus. But it takes a little bit of time, and you may need support. And generally, of course, we have this problem that there are not enough statisticians, there are not enough data scientists, there are not enough AI people, machine learning people. I mean, I feel that there's a denial of service attack currently going on, because I don't know what else should I do. So there are many people working on automatic machine learning, automating machine learning. So there's a growing body of work on providing the foundations, algorithms, and tools to develop systems that help you in your domain, that help you to reproduce even without being an expert in all of these fields. And why is that important? Hey, let's be frank here. Machine learning is a little part of a real scientific project, if you want to use it somewhere, right? It's this tiny block. If you talk to some of the even big guys in Google, the directors will tell you they spend sometimes only 5% of the overall time on this part, and the rest is talking, understanding, communicating, getting data, revising data, all the other things around it, because you have to start with a question. And typically, if you do a PhD in machine learning, your question is not about the domain, your question is about the new machine learning algorithm. But if you want to solve a real scientific question, you have to spend a lot of time, what is the right question? What is the right data? How should I clean that? Then you did a little bit of machine learning, and then you have to communicate your stuff to the real experts. And that takes time. It's not done in a day, right? And then if you're very, very lucky, you may deploy it, but most likely you have to go back to one of these other stages, and it takes a lot of time. Now, even in there, let's face it, you have to make a lot of design questions. What is the right distribution if you want to have a distribution? And I think that's always good, because we want to quantify our uncertainty, and you get uncertainty because we have to abstract, right? The world is too complex to not abstract. And I don't know many people that like that. So even within machine learning, not many people like to talk about, oh, is that a generalized gamma? Maybe. I think most people don't even know what is a generalized gamma. And I only know that because Kristian and I were working on it, so he told me. So there's all of these decisions in there. And then there's another issue. If you work with it for now, it's changing, but if you talk to a typical machine learner, many of them don't know how to tell the story they found. You know, that's not what we are trained in. We are trained in getting something out, but we are not told in communicating. So back in Dortmund, that's why I was happy to have this data science program, data journalism program, because journalists and students for journalism, they are very well in telling stories. I mean, in a positive way, right? Not telling stories like blah, blah, blah. And so putting them together with data science students, it's perfect. So our students don't know how to tell the story, but how to find the material for the story. And the other know how to tell the story, so they teach each other quite a lot. So driven by that, we were really wondering, can there even be an automated data scientist? And we are far away from the solution, because there has to be much more work on automatic data cleaning and all this, the whole loop. But what we did is a system, don't try to understand that here. It's the system that this is how your data typically looks like. So you don't know what is the distribution, there might be missing values. And our system tells you, okay, this data was generated by this distribution. It makes a decision for you. It still gets the correlation, so you get dependencies. And it's fully generative, so you can afterwards generate data. And it can even quantify its own uncertainty about the decision. So it not only tells you, hey, that's an exponential, but I think it's an exponential up to 25%. I mean, so again, I'm not saying perfect. First point is there's hope that it's doable, and it's not out of scope. And if you don't even like to talk about formulas, you can then even have a system that produces just text and graphics. And, you know, I'm talking to some CEOs, they don't even like text. So maybe we should just produce figures, or maybe just thumbs up and down, I don't know. But there are techniques that can go together. Because, in my opinion, what the real issue right now is, next to doing great research, is what I would call, we have to work on systems AI. So it's a little bit like systems biology, which is not looking at a single cell, not at a single algorithm, but we have to work on having many algorithms, many cells that interact, and getting the computational and mathematical basics for that is quite challenging, but quite important, because the next breakthrough, at least on the interdisciplinary level, is most likely not just the next little algorithm, but it's the combination of these algorithms and how to maintain that, how to deploy, how to do all this stuff. And if you don't believe me, which I can understand, here is someone who you may believe more in that.
Hi, Marcin Pogrzeszewski.
So that's Eric Schmidt.
Somehow related to the previous question, what do you believe are the biggest mega trends right now? And especially, what do you believe we should focus on? Like, on which trends we should focus on, especially if you want to start our own startup and get on the tailwind of those mega trends? Thank you.
If I were a computer scientist at your age, I would work on systems AI, because that's, I think, where all the real power is going to be, which is what I've been talking about.
So again, watch it. We are not 100% agreeing on what systems AI is, but he also understands that the main obstacle will be to empower all of you to use our great results. And that's a big challenge for us as well. So we were working on that because actually data is never coming in a single Excel sheet. That's a kind of ridiculous assumption in my opinion. Because if you look, for example, at heart attack, you have complex databases there. You have lab results in there. You have Excel sheets of some questions. You may have imaging data. You have, and they are not single tables, but tons of tables. You have time series in there. So we have to deal with that, and there is a big field. By now, you can call it statistical relational AI or probabilistic programming, and some people even PricewaterhouseCoopers, which makes me always a little bit suspicious. They believe that this is the future after deep learning. Let's see whether it's happening, but it works. So we applied it on heart attack prediction on a longitudinal study where we had about 5,000 people for about 40 years, and they were coming every 5 years. And the question was, what is more pressing, what is resulting in a higher risk for heart attacks when you're young and overweighted and smoking, or when you're old and only smoking, all these questions. And you can come up with models that are roughly interpretable. They are kind of logical rules. And what is interesting here is, for example, that cholesterol value is more important for making a risk prediction than whether you're smoking or not. Of course, when you smoke, you're still in danger, don't get me wrong. But the US-American colleagues, they like that result because medics in the US always first are smoking there because that's their tradition. And the funny part is you can do that, almost 40,000 times faster than traditional machine learning, right? So it's doable. You can do it, and again, if you want to use it, just use it. You don't have to understand how to really do it. And actually, there are many companies trying to pick that up. And there's overall something like $800 million invest into these kinds of techniques. So what I have tried to convince you of is, I think we need deep learning. That's pretty cool, being differentiable. But we need, so to say, a new level of deep learning that knows when it doesn't know. I think that's pretty important. I also try to convince you that we need open AI systems because it should not be an elite discussion between people that do research there, but ultimately we should try to help all of you. And we can so much learn also from you, right? You have so fantastic questions. So I think this is a win-win situation. And AI per se should be responsible. And for that, I would like to make a final statement in a sense that I think the real power is putting really machines and humans in the loop. Because then you can get something like a co-active learning setting where the human can control much better what the machine should learn, but the machine can also tell the human, hey, you might have a blind spot here. So we may learn also from the machine that we are not perfect somewhere and we can improve. So here's one example doing that. So coming back to Clever Hans by Klaus Robert Müller, because to be honest, I think what Klaus Robert did is halfway. So we invent this cool black box, and now we have a tool that tells us doesn't work. That's frustrating, right? I mean, we still want to have the system that works. So somehow, how can we make use of the knowledge that it doesn't work to improve? So what we are doing is here you see again these plant data. It's a slightly different one, again hyperspectral. And what is happening is if you can see it here, if you just look at what the machine is doing, it actually, so these plants are living on what is called agar, so it's a liquid in order to stay alive. And what the explanation of the system for a very good prediction whether it's ill or not is it checks whether this liquid has enough, what is it called? Nährstoffe, nutritions exactly in there, right? So it makes sense, but it's biologically not what you want to have. You would like to have explanations that are on top of the plant. So now what you can do is you can give feedback, and you could say right prediction, but for the wrong reasons. And what is happening is by closing the loop, actually the machine starts to adapt on the plausible parts without telling the machine this is the plausible part. So putting machines and humans together in the loop helps you to correct the machine and gives you the idea to learn more. So with that, I'm ready more or less to conclude, because that's exactly what I think the future of AI is. It's sometimes nowadays called the third wave of AI, because in the early days, everything was hand-coded. Now we are in this phase of where we see how much you can do already if you can do learning in a sense. But these systems have to be much more human-like, in the sense that they can communicate to you what is going on, and you can communicate to them in order to improve. And they need reasoning capabilities and ways to be not surprised by, new situations, because otherwise the system will fail. And to achieve that, I also hope I have shown you that this is really a team sport. So we need all of you. I hope you also see that you need us a little bit. So together we can really do a lot, and that is, in my opinion, in AI, it is a team sport. And if you want to know, you were talking about it, we tried, and it's really not the colleagues. I mean, you can also try. It's really meant that I think we should stop having an elite discussion. We have to get machine learning AI educated into the masses. We have to understand people that on purpose didn't like to take math to still understand, to have an open discussion, and that's why we wrote this book. This book is actually written by students, so we were just giving a course, and then their exercise was to, in parallel, write a book to explain what they learned to others. So have a look, and particularly if you are at a university, you typically get Springer Link for free, so you can have a look at it. And also here, thanks to Matthias Kleiner that he is supporting all of this. Thank you for your time.